to bureaus, agents, all that stuff. And Russ, I do want to kick things off with you because I know you kind of wanted to hit on this more specifically. Is there any specific questions, Russ, that you had or that anyone really has around bureaus and agents? But Russ, I'll start with you before I kind of get into my spiel. Is there any specific questions you have as it relates to the bureaus or you wanted me to touch on today specifically, Russ?
Mainly what you think their value is, how useful are they, how hard do they go to work for you, and what is a fair price to pay for it.
Cool. Sweet. So let me give you, if I can, um, let me go into, if I can, guys, like, so let me kind of give a backstory. I think many of you know this, right? And I'm going to kind of, Russ, I'll hit on all of that and I'll kind of give you guys the overview of like this whole world of bureaus, agents, managers, how they fit in. So I actually technically run a bureau, right? So my experience in the speaking industry is I started about, oh, I don't know, I think it was like 6-ish years ago, 5, 6 years ago. I invested in an online course, kind of went through, how to get gigs, started landing my first couple of paid gigs in the college market. I was kind of focused on, like, I called it like mental and emotional wellness optimization. So not so much like mental health, suicide, that stuff, but how to optimize your mental and emotional well-being, productivity, performance. And and I'm just giving some context here because I think it would be helpful. Um, as I kind of went through that, every time cold calling was a big thing to get into those spaces, Greek life, student activities, that kind of stuff. As I was going through it, every time I'd like have someone on the line and they say, yeah, we do book speakers, the next question I'd ask is like, oh, great. Like, what types of speakers do you generally work for? And the story I like to tell is I would always hold my breath because I'd be like, hopefully it's mental health, hopefully it's personal, development. And it would be sometimes, but a lot of the times it'd be other topics. It'd be things like leadership or DEI or sexual assault or whatever it was. And so, as happenstance has it, at the time I was doing that, I also moved to Austin, Texas. I started meeting a lot of different people. The first kid I met, like one of my first friends in Austin, happened to be a leadership coach. And I was playing with this idea that one of my friends down there, an entrepreneur, actually a kid who's still, I was talking to him yesterday, we booked a gig for him in the college space for the fall, was like, hey, you should build what Gary Vaynerchuk has built with Vayner speakers and kind of represent different speakers. And I was like, yeah, kind of poo-pooing it. But I started to see the opportunity. And so long story short, that's kind of where I sort of parlayed. I started, for a couple of years, it was like, I was doing some speaking gigs, but then I was also booking other speakers out to opportunities where the need was there. And that's kind of the role that I fully moved into, right? So MII professional speaking, basically at the end of the day, we're a speaking bureau, right? Now, how speaking bureaus work specifically, right, is they're going to take a 20, 25, 30% commission, right, off of gigs that are booked. Now, I think there's a massive, 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 can't overstate enough, massive misunderstanding of what bureaus are, right? I have 25, 30-ish speakers that are on my roster. These speakers, are technically independent contractors of me. Many of them are on other bureau websites. Many of them are full-time speakers themselves, right? Very successful. Many of them, and I would say too, as you get into like the bigger bureaus, I'll still run up some deals at 5K, 6K, 7K, 9K, and take anywhere from $1,000 to $3 to $4 off of it. Most big bureaus will not represent a speaker like 15K. We have a bureau we're working with and partnering with because they have an exclusive speaker, and it's for a 15K virtual gig. And she's like, this is incredibly low. Like they represent, it's Big Speak. If you guys have heard of them, they represent like Kevin O'Leary and like they're used to like, 50, 100K deals for their speakers. And so most speakers, most speaking bureaus, I would say the bare minimum that they're going to bring someone onto their roster is a speaker who can command, 15K. And part of the reason why is because they're working on commission only, right? The bureau model is set up in a way like I don't get paid unless we close deals, right? And so that's one piece of it, right? 20 to 30% is pretty standard, right? Now, understand too that 20 to 30% in why I get that, right, is because we're giving opportunities to our speakers. I'm bringing opportunity to our speakers that they otherwise would not have, right? Because bureaus, and as I continue to learn in more of our value proposition in the speaking space, we've kind of positioned ourselves in MII is we are going to simplify and streamline the speaker booking process for you. Hey, you're a director of HR or VP of strategic people operations at a big insurance company. You have 3 events. It's actually a real case study of one of my big clients. You have 3 events every year that you need to source different speakers for. Also, as a VP of strategic people operations, sourcing speakers and a 20, a 25, a 30K speaker for each of those events is not a high priority for you. You have a million other things to do. And so where we act is like this client, and our clients will come to us and say, hey, Joe, here's what I'm looking for. Here's our budget. Here's what we want. You're my trusted guy. Send me a list of folks, right? And so kind of going back to the speaker side of things, again, the speaker is more than happy to give up that percentage because they would not have otherwise had the opportunity if it weren't for the bureau. The bureau usually maintains the relationship with the client. And again, what I've sort of found, I don't find this is always true, but a decent amount of like the more you get into those higher ticket deals, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50K plus, most companies are going to want to go through a bureau. There's kind of an additional cachet per se to working with a speaker at that caliber, that they want to go through the bureau, and they probably have a trusted bureau partner. They come through me at MII, or they come through Kepler Speakers, or they come from whoever it is, right? And so it's great in that way, right? Now, my theory and how I teach things here and how we teach things here for all of you is that you really shouldn't be thinking about bureaus at all, right? Should you aspire to be bureau ready and whenever to get to the point where bureaus are reaching out to you and saying, Russ, I had a client and he's really interested in you, for sure. But what we teach is that if you want to be, and Russ, I know your goals, I'm not going to say them here. I know just from our conversations what your goals are that you want to be doing monthly. A bureau will never get you there. Like never. Like unless you're like a Kevin O'Leary, or like you're not going to get to the level that you want to get to in your speaking career through bureau representation, right? How you're going to get there is what we teach, I believe, what we teach, which is, and I'm just going to share this with you guys, building the systems internally, right? So what we say all the time is that bureaus, and again, this is where the misconception comes into play. I think a lot of speakers think I just need a bureau. I need an agent. My story's great. I'm amazing. If I just get a bureau, they're going to have all the connections, and that's going to lead to a billion of different opportunities. And really, it couldn't be further from the truth. You could get bureau representation. I'm sure, a lot of these bureaus you could reach out to them and, they'll put a page on their website and, maybe they'll get you a gig or two a year. But this idea that you, one, need a bureau to be successful, not true. This idea that like getting a bureau or a manager or an agent, and getting that representation is like the I made it moment, and now you can just sit back and stuff comes to you. Not true, false, right? So, because here's the thing, and I talk to people all the time on sales calls, conversation. Guy yesterday, I'm talking to him later today, and hopefully he'll sign up and join us here at Speaker Scale. Pre-COVID was getting booked all the time by bureaus. Former Southwest Airlines guy that worked there. He speaks on culture. Something happened. He just popped. The bureaus were booking him left and right. Now he wasn't doing any outbound. He didn't have any of his own stuff. Now, COVID hit. He's sort of become not old news, but the bureaus aren't booking him as much. And now he's like, I don't know what to do. I went from literally 2 gigs a week at 10 to 15K to a month, right? And so having what we say is like bureaus, inbound, referrals, all that stuff is amazing, guys. Getting opportunities from inbound, from referrals, from bureaus, like it's all fantastic. But it's not really scalable. Inbound is referral, like some of that stuff is the more you speak, the more you speak, like all that stuff. It's not really predictable though, because you don't know when a bureau is going to call. You don't know when an inbound is going to come in, and when you can't really systematize it. And I don't like anything in business that you can't systematize. And so that's why we teach what we teach, is that build these systems up internally. And I actually believe and hold the belief that you are going to be better off eventually building your own bureau or agent internally, like sales agent internally, that works for you specifically and is specifically responsible for pushing you, than getting on these bureaus' websites and all that stuff, right? And the reason why is because, again, I'll give you a couple other examples. Many of these bureaus, the big ones, They have hundreds of speakers on their roster. And at the end of the day, their duty, like my duty and obligation, as much as I love all of my speakers and I love to book, all of them to every opportunity, my duty at the end of the day is to my client who's paying the bills, which is, VP of Strategic People Operations. And many times my clients will come to me and say, hey, Joe, here's who we want. Like I've had my client, this big insurance company I work with, like there's a couple opportunities where she's like, hey, we have this event. Could you get me pricing on these 4 speakers? And like kind of let me know your thoughts. And then I'll just go out, get pricing, understand terms, try to get them the best deal, broker the deal. Right. But again, like my duty at the end of the day is like if I send over Lee, Steve, Russ, and Ivy, I would love to book all of them because I love all of them. I believe in their messages. But at the end of the day, if the client says, I don't like any of them, get me another list, well, that's what I'm going to do. Right. And so that's sort of, the bureau world as a whole. Now, there is another world that I've sort of learned about, which is a couple things. And again, this is like higher level. There's exclusive bureau representation, and then there's like managers and agents and that kind of stuff. So let's just talk briefly about exclusive bureau representation. So a lot of these bureaus, Big Speak and that stuff, they have exclusive speakers. And we actually just did this for the first time. I literally just really learned about this world, and like it's pretty fascinating and it's pretty sweet for the bureau. And I'll tell you why. Exclusive bureau representation is basically like, so there's this guy that we're working with Comcast we've closed a deal that they're being funky with the paperwork, but they wanted a guy for AAPI month, Asian American Pacific Islander month. They had like 15K virtual. And I found this guy, his name's Jia Jung, I think his name is. He had a whole TED talk on like rejection and getting rejected and failure and all that stuff. So I pitched them. I like oftentimes if I don't have a speaker specifically like on my roster, like we're a little thin on AAPI speakers, I would just go to ChatGPT, find a speaker within the budget range, and then pitch that to the client. And that's been huge for me this year in really like increasing our bookings. And so they wanted this guy, Ja, and Ja is exclusively represented by Big Speak, right? That means that any opportunity that comes to Ja's website, that comes to his email, that I reached out to him on LinkedIn, he has a contract with Big Speak that says, yeah, absolutely, talk with my agent, I'm exclusive with them. And so they're taking a cut on every single deal that he gets. And so we just did this with this guy, Abby. Abby's this very successful like real estate business entrepreneur. He's done a lot in the real estate world. He often gets a lot of inbound requests, people coming to his website, that stuff. He doesn't want to deal with it. He has 3 other businesses. Like he wants to speak, but it's not his main source of income. And so he's like, look, dude, I'll just go exclusive with you. It's kind of a handshake agreement. Any opportunities that come to me, I'll pass it to you. You run the sales process. You handle the logistics. I hop on a pre-event call or 2. You handle everything else. I show up, I speak, you take your commission, and he's happy to do that, right? So once you get to the point where you have a lot of inbound opportunities and you're getting more bureau attention and that stuff, there can be an opportunity to go exclusive. But again, my theory is like bureau agents aside, it's good to aspire to. The other thing, hold on really quick, I'll say too, because I think this is important. We'll do probably, I don't know, 40, 50-ish gigs this year, somewhere in there. My most booked speaker, like will speak like that I repeat booked more than once will be like 3 times. Like my most booked speaker out of the 50 gigs that we'll do this year will be like 3 to 4 times. A speaker who does 3 to 4 different, gigs for us, right? And that's pretty common. Obviously, as you get into bigger numbers with bigger bureaus and that stuff, they're going to be speaking more than that. But still, it kind of goes back to that point that if you're looking to bureaus to kind of fill your calendar, it's not going to happen, right? And so, yeah, that's sort of the point there. We want it to be cherry on the top. We want it to be icing on the cake. What we want is to, and what we're teaching you guys here and on you guys to build is to build that cake internally, right? Build that really solid cake that's built on proven systems and processes. You build a team around it. You have these different engines and these inputs that you can put into, and that when a bureau gig comes, it's great. But again, you already have a thriving speaking business internally. And so that's sort of my spiel on that. I'm happy to kind of dive into eventually when it makes sense. Like I'm actually going to create a post on this that talks through the different hires And like I know I mentioned that kind of hiring an internal sales agent, sort of what that would look like. We have some clients that are like 3, 4, 500K a year plus who have been in the space a while and have their own kind of internal sales agents. And I'm happy to kind of walk through that process and when it would make sense to make that hire and that stuff. But let me kind of take a step back and see if anyone has any specific, I'll check the chat too. If anyone has any specific like questions to that, follow-up questions, anything that comes up, anything else I can kind of dive into from like a bureau agent kind of, that world and help demystify it all.
I've got a quick question. When you talk about how you went on ChatGPT to kind of source for the speaker, is there something we should be doing, whether it's on our personal websites or something SEO wise, to make sure that we pop up on those?
Yeah.
And should we make sure that we have the pricing in there too, so that that pops up? I want to make sure that, that's being taken care of so we can pop up on those things as well.
Dude, that's a great question. That's a really, really good question, Jason. Here is what I'll say. That world is in about, it was supposed to be this week, but we're finishing our rebranded website. The world of SEO is one that I'm learning more and more about, and I will have a more definitive answer on the how. My answer to your question is yeah, right? It's one of those things, and I'm going to give you some tactical things you guys can do now to like show up on that stuff. The tactical, the answer to your question is yeah, there's certainly things like to get yourself out there, brand and that stuff to build that up so that you can pop up on a Google search or, now it's really just ChatGPT is replacing Google. The SEO world, I'm working with soon. I'm signing up and working with an entrepreneur I know who's in the speaking world who has really broken into SEO recently, and over the past year has closed a bunch of gigs from SEO and has increased that side of his business. So that is going to be another lead generation pillar, right, under that lead gen engine that I will be providing more information around to Jason. And then also for those that are interested, I can intro you guys to him and his services and that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I can say now to give yourself the best shot, because when it comes to SEO and like for this, I'm paying him monthly to basically handle the SEO and then he does his whole thing. I don't know the how behind it. So it is a pay to play model. Google ads, sponsored SEO. What I do know about it is it's pay to play, right? And so, unless you have an unlimited bankroll, I think there's a time and place to do it, right? We feel that we're at a place where it's like, hey, we're still going to run outbound. We're still going to do our stuff, but I want to increase lead flow and start diversifying our lead flow sources. And so paying for SEO makes sense for me at this point, right? So that's the one thing I'll say. The biggest thing, man, is just like brand, content, continue. Like the biggest thing to get more bureau ready, right, is obviously continue to increase your speaking fees, continue to get better and stuff that comes over time. The other thing is just overall brand. And overall, like if I go ChatGPT and I'm looking for a culture speaker, this is top of mind because we booked one recently for a September gig and we were emailing back and forth. I search culture speaker within this price range. And then I need to make sure I go to their website. It's obviously very professional. It's up to speed. I know she can command that fee. I'm confident in that. And it's very clear what they do. So the biggest thing I'd say, other than like paying for SEO or going down that whole rabbit hole of the nitty gritty how of it, is the things that you can organically kind of increase search is just continuing to increase your brand on LinkedIn, update your marketing materials and that stuff as things continue to grow and like really nail in that messaging so that again, when they're looking for a mental health speaker either in the area or they're looking for the expert on XYZ in mental health or burnout, your name is one that pops up. So yeah, that's sort of my answer. External Jason of like actually going and paying for SEO or paid ads and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And that also, too, really quick, is a good question if you're available for the Wednesday calls to ask Coach Chris, because Coach Chris, obviously, a lot of his gigs have come through inbound and his content, and he's a master at that. He has also worked with a decent amount of bureaus, and he's gotten a decent amount of bureau gigs and that kind of stuff. And so I think from a speaker perspective of things that maybe he's done to increase those relationships or to increase, people finding him is something he can speak to. Yeah. Additional questions on the bureau world, agents, managers, any of that stuff that I can help answer before I give a few more tidbits and then let y'all go. Russ, was that helpful? Any follow-up questions on that?
No, that's good. I guess it's just not the right time. I didn't know if that was a tool I could leverage early on to start getting work more consistently or not. That sounds like I got some work to do myself first.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say, and take this as you will. I think you're not alone in having that thought process. And here's the thing too, Russ, with your experience and background in the Blue Angels, like, I mean, it couldn't hurt, to reach out and do some stuff. I just wouldn't make it the sole focus, right? I think a lot of speakers have the idea that, again, if I just get in a bureau, if I that's going to solve all my problems. And again, what we found and why we teach what we teach in building this stuff up is because, I mean, man, even the speakers I know that, again, are doing the numbers that you're aspiring to, Russ, and will do over the next couple of years, most of them is not coming from bureaus. They're at the point, I have speakers who are, let's say, 300, 400, 500K plus. They're at the point where 10, 20% of their work is coming from bureaus and they want to increase that to 30, 40%, right? And there are some levers at that point we can pull in nurturing the relationships. But again, most of their stuff is coming from outbound, or is coming from outbound that then they got on stage, they crush it, it leads to a referral, it leads to spin-off business, it leads to repeat business, all that good stuff. Let me share this with you guys really quick, and then I do want to just like super quickly break down, and I can actually break it down as I'm going through this. I can super quickly break down like some of the team hires that we want to make and when we want to make them. So this is kind of something, guys, that like each of your sole goals, I believe, in coming through this program, the Scalable Speaker Engine, Scalable Speaker, what we're calling it, is to, one, build out the Scalable Speaker Engine, and more importantly, to get to like 150, 200K a year in yearly speaking revenue through your own internal systems and processes and really building this out. Once you get to 150, 200, like 150-ish, then we can look to make the first hire. But like truly the first like 100, 150K a year, I say it all the time. The way I got there was just literally picking up the phone 50 times a day, right? And just calling these people, and like it's not necessarily a super intricate, like you have to do a million things. It starts to get nuanced. Once you get to 150, 200, okay, then you're making a hire and there's a little more complexity. But like getting to your first, 100, 150K a year is like, just follow the process. Post content, build a marketing engine, do lead gen like a madman, refine it, tweak it, that stuff. But a lot of it's just like kind of put your head down and grind. Right now, once you get to 150, let me just kind of break this down, and then I'll kind of break down the hire. So this is kind of what we're really like. If I could encapsulate a lot of what we teach here, this is really what it's predicated on, right? Fuck bureaus, fuck agents, fuck all that stuff. What you guys want to do in your speaking business is build this, right? And so at the heart of us, and I believe this is true for like at the heart of really any business, at the heart of any real thriving, scalable business is proven, battle-tested systems and processes, right? Things that work, things that if you put input into will lead to the desired outcome over time, right? So proven, battle-tested systems and processes. Now, the things that sort of drive each of those over time is team, or you could call it like manual human labor, data, right? So you have data to kind of track the progress, the success, the bottlenecks in those systems and processes, and then technology. Things like automation, things like different tools that you can use to increase, automate, make your workflow a little less. And that's really what drives the systems and processes. And then off of that, the like systems and processes, team, data, and technology should, like, you will have all those involved in each of these respective engines. So your speaker marketing engine, your speaker lead generation engine, your speaker sales engine, your fulfillment engine, and then your team and scale engine. All of these engines, as we're calling them, departments, call them whatever they are fueled with a basis of proven systems and processes, team data, and technology, right? So your marketing engine is going to have proven systems and processes at the core and is going to be driven by team data and technology. Same thing for your lead gen engine, same thing for your sales engine, fulfillment engine, team, and scale. But this is ultimately like kind of conceptually what we're trying to build out. And obviously within the marketing engine, there's aspects to it, right? Okay, you can do YouTube, you can do LinkedIn, you can do a newsletter, right? There's different things that we teach of what you want to include and some bare necessity pillars to have within the marketing engine. Within lead gen, same thing, right? So that's kind of what we're building out, and what I want you guys focus on building out, because when you have this, you become bulletproof. And here's the thing, this isn't like the sexiest, like fun, most glamorous work, but when you have this, you have a business that's predictable, right? And when you have this, bureaus, agents, like you don't care about them. Like, yeah, they're cool, but they're additive to this, right? What we want to build out is this, and in this order: marketing engine, lead gen engine, sales engine, fulfillment engine, team and scale engine.